A young guy fell into a trap, stepped on a mine, but suddenly an unexpected person appears who took advantage of the guy's helplessness and took advantage of the defenselessness of a young girl. The guy couldn't leave it like that and decides to take revenge on him, but not just kill him, but take revenge according to the rule of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The film begins with a man taking a photograph of 3 individuals. As he prepares for the shot, he notices something peculiar beneath Chris's feet. Alicia believes the man needs assistance with the camera, but he loudly warns her not to move. Daniel looks down and observes that Chris is standing on something. He quickly kneels and clears the debris around his foot, leading them all to discover he is standing on a landmine. Alicia starts crying frantically and is shocked by the situation. Meanwhile, the photographer, fearing for his safety, flees down the hill. Chris shows visible concern and tries to remain still. Daniel accompanies Alicia to the top of the hill where there is signal and attempts to seek help. Strangely, he then returns towards Chris with a resentful look on his face. This is when he confesses to Chris that he was the one who placed the landmine there. Chris is very perplexed, and when Alicia joins them, Daniel reveals that he knows about their affair. Chris was his closest friend and Alicia was engaged to marry him. He cannot believe they betrayed him. In a fit of anger, he devised a plan and lured them there for revenge. Alicia pleads for Daniel's forgiveness, but he deems it too late. Ignoring her explanations, he instead walks towards a tree and grabs a shovel. He informs them that after Chris perishes, his intention was to bury him in the woods. Chris doubts the authenticity of the mine as Daniel was standing next to him earlier during the photo setup. Why would he stand so close if it were real? Daniel then removes the safety fuse, revealing the mine is indeed real. If Chris were to step off the mine now, he would face immediate danger. Alicia embraces Daniel, attempting to reason with him. However, he refuses to listen and grows increasingly furious. He states he believed he could trust them and had envisioned a future with Alicia. He tosses away the safety fuse and walks away. Later on, we see Daniel meeting with the photographer who he orchestrated and guided to make Chris stand on the mine while pretending to capture a photo. Alicia remains behind and manages to locate the safety cord, attempting her utmost to reinsert it into the mine. Despite her best efforts, she is unsuccessful. Subsequently, she opts to grab a shovel and begins excavating a hole. In the meantime, a huntsman passing by with his canine observes the turmoil and approaches to investigate. Alicia tries to keep the dog away from Chris, but when the huntsman arrives with his firearm, he instructs Chris to turn around. Upon learning that he is unable to do so, the huntsman fires towards his feet. Eventually convinced, he approaches and examines the mine closely. The huntsman then picks up a rock and hurls it towards Chris's feet. Both he and Alicia become enraged but are powerless to retaliate. The huntsman reveals that he just wanted to ensure they were being truthful as he resides in the vicinity and was unaware of the presence of mines. He inquires about the events leading up to their predicament and how they found themselves in such a dire situation. He makes it clear that he will only assist if they provide him with the truth. Alicia recounts the chain of events, prompting the huntsman to offer his help on one condition. Recognizing their vulnerable state, he attempts to take advantage of the situation, insisting that Alicia relinquish her garments. Although Chris endeavors to offer monetary compensation, the huntsman remains disinterested. Ultimately, Alicia is left with no choice but to comply with his demands. The huntsman begins rendering assistance, but suddenly the radio in his possession springs to life. Alicia overhears this and rushes over to request permission to utilize it to call for help. Once again, the huntsman toys with her emotions, stipulating that she may do so under the condition that she retrieves the scarf she had given him, which he had cavalierly tossed to the ground by crawling and collecting it with her mouth. Despite Alicia's frustration, she picks up the scarf, yet the huntsman insists she crawl and retrieve it once more using her mouth. Dissatisfied, he compels her to perform the degrading task. Ultimately, the huntsman hands over the radio to Alicia's dismay. The individual on the other end does not speak English. Desperate for assistance, she has no alternative but to implore the huntsman for his help once more. The huntsman informs her he would be willing to assist if she commenced removing articles of her clothing initially. Alicia declined, but soon she realized it was her sole means of extricating herself from the situation, so she began complying as he had requested. While the man acted as an interpreter, unbeknownst to both of them, the huntsman was deceiving them as he was not relaying everything Alicia was instructing him to say. Shortly, she was left with only her undergarments and concluded her plea for help. She instructed the huntsman that he could depart, and we witness him gathering his belongings and leaving. As he walked away, his radio buzzed once more, and the audacious huntsman approached Alicia, proposing to disclose the translations once again. He demanded she remove an article of clothing. At this juncture, Chris became irate and began swearing at him. The huntsman brandished his firearm towards him and cautioned him to mind his language. Suddenly, Alicia seized her opportunity and sprinted away. Subsequently, the huntsman set loose his dog, which pursued her down the mountainside. He picked up a rope and swiftly followed. In the following scene, Chris bent down, gradually retrieving the safety cable. He then fastened it around his waist and managed to seize the huntsman's gun. Later, we observed the huntsman returning with Alicia by his side. His demeanor became more hostile, warning Chris to lower the gun. Chris froze and found himself incapable of taking action as the huntsman led Alicia behind the trees. Just as Chris aimed the gun to fire, the hunter's dog charged towards him, knocking him to the ground. The gun discharged, tragically hitting Alicia instead of the hunter. Miraculously, the mine did not detonate when Chris was knocked down. When Chris eventually regained consciousness, he discovered the huntsman had departed with his dog. He found Alicia lying in a trench, cradling her body while shedding inconsolable tears. Several weeks later, Chris arrives at a dwelling seeking assistance from a woman residing there. The woman graciously permits him to elucidate his situation. Suddenly, a man enters the house, revealing himself to be the huntsman. The huntsman is astounded by what he witnesses and is overcome with shock. He persuades Chris to fabricate a pretext and ushers him out of the residence, cautioning him to maintain distance. Upon the return of the huntsman to his abode, he unleashes his canine, which pursues Chris. Subsequently, he hears the dog outside and hurries to find blood splattered across the floor. Inside the premises, we witness Chris ushering the injured dog inside, explaining that it had been struck by a passing vehicle. Upon the huntsman's return, he hastily seizes his firearm and aims it at Chris. Astutely, Chris had already removed the bullets and shoots the huntsman in the leg. He then instructs the mother and daughter to bring him indoors. We then observe Chris instructing the daughter to restrain her mother, prompting the huntsman to break down, pleading with Chris to desist. He confesses he was under the influence of alcohol and not in his right state of mind when he assaulted Alicia. Chris grabs a bottle of wine and takes a swig, compelling the mother and daughter to partake as well, and spill some over the huntsman's lap. He instructs the daughter to remove her scarf and crawl on the floor to retrieve it, replicating the huntsman's actions towards Alicia, placing the scarf in the huntsman's mouth. Chris engages in psychological manipulation with the family while the mother and daughter tremble in fear for their lives. Chris is resolute on exacting full revenge. Subsequently, we witness Chris loading a bullet into the gun and informing the daughter that she must remove an article of clothing each time the gun is discharged without a bullet. The huntsman collapses, beseeching for forgiveness, yet Chris is far from concluding his vendetta. When Chris fires the gun for the third time, leading to the daughter's demise, he slumps to the ground in shock at his actions, contemplating the lifeless body huddled in the corner. Chris finally attains his vengeance, culminating in the conclusion of the movie. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel if it's not difficult for you. It will help me promote. What do you think about this film? Did you like it or not? Write your opinion in the comments. I think that both of them acted wrongly in this situation, the hunter who took advantage of the girl's defenselessness, as well as the guy who went to take revenge on the hunter. Although the hunter's daughter was probably